Let's talk about the Chicago Blackhawks, because this is one of those teams that has such a strange direction to the point where you think about where they were a year ago, you think about where they were 6 months ago, you think about where they were at the trade deadline, and you think about where they're projected to go in the next few months. The direction of this team is so odd that I can't really put my finger on what exactly the Blackhawks have done to consistently carve themselves a path over the past calendar year. Are they rebuilding? Are they retooling on the fly? Are guys going out there with the expectation that they're still going to be able to win? Should they be able to go out there with that expectation? Who really knows? What I do know, though, is that the Chicago Blackhawks have been in a pretty precarious situation over the past few months when it comes to their standings within the NHL's Central Division. They're not doing all too well. You've got yourselves an aging core. You've got a GM that was fired because of things that he should have been fired for a long time ago. And now you have yourselves a future to look forward to that is supposed to carry over the names like Kirby Dach, because he was taken in 2019, Alex DeBrincat, who was taken in 2016, and Brandon Hagel. Wait, never mind. Brandon Hagel just got traded, and we also heard rumors that DeBrincat and Dach were potentially on the table if anybody had offers for them. And to be fair, the sentiment that we heard from, I believe it was Frank Saravalli, was that if you traded DeBrincat, it means that somebody went out there and gave Chicago a tremendous offer that they could not say no to. And to be completely fair to the Blackhawks, it appears that the Tampa Bay Lightning did that when they sent over 2 first-round picks and all that other stuff for Hagel. Despite that, though, we have ourselves the captain Jonathan Toews and the way he has responded to the trade deadline. There was an article published on The Athletic. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to go ahead and read it. It was published by Mark Lazarus, and the title is this: "We'll see Jonathan Toews mulls his future with the Blackhawks in wake of the discouraging Brandon Hagel trade," published on March 18th. Now, we know that when it comes to the way Chicago and their veterans have been approaching the situation, they were ticked off about a year ago when the Brandon Saad trade went down, the second one, I mean. We made a video going over, at the time, how the older guys on the team were apparently questioning the direction and how they weren't consulted on the idea of a rebuild, and trading away Brandon Saad was this big thing because you're trading away a very valuable player of your lineup. And it seems like the Brandon Hagel thing is just that same story repeated again. Brandon Saad in 2021, Brandon Hagel in 2022, both trades seen as discouraging by some guys who are a little bit older on the team. Now, when it comes to this article on The Athletic, there's a quote from Jonathan Toews that I want to read out. Because The Athletic is The Athletic, we're not going to screenshot the article per se, we're going over onto Mark Lazarus' Twitter account instead, because he posted the quote there publicly. If Brandon Hagel is not a guy that's part of a rebuild, then I don't know. I don't know if anyone feels safe at this point. Now, cue the entire joke. Oh, of course, leave it to Jonathan Toews to talk about players not feeling safe in Chicago. Let's just get that out of the way first. But when it comes to the idea of what Jonathan Toews' perspective is towards the rebuild and towards his own future on the team, there's another quote from Toews himself, too, that I wanted to highlight on the channel as well. "I'm not gonna lie. It was disheartening to see a couple of really good friends go. When you cultivate that chemistry and that friendship and that connection with your teammates, you want to keep building off of it. So it's definitely a little disheartening." He's talking, one, about Brandon Hagel, of course. He might also be referring to Fleury, because that guy's also out and about. Of course, though, Fleury only had 1 year left on his deal anyway, so it's not like he was the most solidified guy in the world to be sticking around in Chicago. "For the longest time, though," Toews said, "the thought never entered my mind to leave the Blackhawks, and in this case, you can't help but picture yourself and what it would be like to play for another team and what that experience would bring. The thought pops in your mind, but Chicago is my home." You then talk about whether or not Jonathan Toews would get traded, or any of the other big-name guys on this market right here. You have Kane, you have Toews, both making $10.5 million a season till the end of 2023. For Patrick Kane, the rumors are pretty simple. This guy was on the market, not necessarily on the market, I guess, no. There were conversations about this guy for sure, because he's really gosh darn valuable. You take a look at what Patrick Kane has been doing this season, and I mean, it's nothing short of spectacular just how productive Patrick Kane is remaining. Despite the fact that he's in the latter half of his career, Patrick Kane has 74 points in 60 games played right now. Of course, there are teams going out there and calling about this guy. You have Alex DeBrincat, who's got 58 points in 64 games as well. He is making $6.4 million till the end of this upcoming season in 2023. He will expire as an RFA. Jonathan Toews making $10.5 million a season. I'm sorry, dude, but just based off of this guy's production right here, I don't really think that there's any concern that he should be having as to whether or not he's going to be on the trade market at all either. Firstly, he's got a full no-move clause. Secondly, he's got 26 points in 53 games played. I'm sorry, Jonathan, but that's on pace for 35 points over 71 games played on the year. It's not really the guy that I think NHL teams would be biting the bullet to wanting to get, especially at $10.5 million. Now, if Chicago is willing to retain half of it, sure, we'll see whether or not that's possible, but they are already retaining two guys. Olli Maatta, Marc-Andre Fleury. I do believe the limit is 3, so we'll see where exactly that goes. Then, of course, when it comes to big money players on this Blackhawks team, you still have Seth Jones, whose $9.5 million AAV contract extension goes till 2030. This guy's 27 years old. He'll be, 8 years? So he'll be 35 when this 9.5 AAV contract expires. Boy, you guys just got rid of Keith and Seabrook and all that. Now you have Jones. Now, to be fair, Seth Jones has been producing a lot. 42 points, 60 games played. He's had a pretty good year, despite all the advanced analytics not really painting him as a good defensive defender. He's on pace for his second best ever season point production-wise, which I do think is significant. It's just, this is another one of those things that really makes you go, okay, what in the world are the Blackhawks doing? You talked about the rebuild decision from a year ago to trade away Brandon Saad and get the older guys on the team ticked off. And then you talk about the Adam Boqvist trade. That's kind of the opposite of a rebuilding move, is it not? Boqvist is a young guy. He's still got a lot to prove. I do think that he's going to become better than what he is right now. But this Jones and Boqvist trade came after the Brandon Saad trade. And then you signed Jones to that huge extension afterwards. So to me, it's so difficult to try to pinpoint just where the twists and turns lie in the direction of the Chicago Blackhawks. But with the Brendan Hagel trade, with the Marc-Andre Fleury trade, I think it's a lot easier to see now than ever that the rebuild route is probably their next destination. It's just the few hiccups along the way have made me doubt myself when thinking of that conclusion, like Seth Jones, for example. The Fleury trade, the first one I mean, was a very good trade because they traded away a non-NHL player for Marc-Andre Fleury, whom they then traded away to Minnesota for draft picks. So, pretty good wheeling and dealing there for Chicago. It's just, when it comes to Jonathan Toews starting to talk about, oh, you wonder what it's like playing with other teams. Like, that's a very strange thought, very strange thing to go out there to the media and say. And even if I think about that 50% salary retained thing that we were talking about earlier, like, Jonathan Toews at $5.25 million a season? I mean, is that a 35 point player? I don't know. I guess leadership, intangibles, Stanley Cup winning qualities and all that kind of form some sort of resemblance when it comes to monetary value, but that's really hard to quantify. You're going to have to convince some like Jim Benning or whatever to go out there and make a trade for Jonathan Toews if you are actually going to use those variables as justification for the money, because the point production alone I don't really think is worth it at this stage. Patrick Kane's a different story. The guy's still an absolute monster, and I feel like with the way the Blackhawks have been trending the past few months with Marc-Andre Fleury, with Brendan Hagel, with the way these older stars have been kind of treated by their teams as well, I feel like we probably should see the Claude Giroux treatment being given to these guys sometime down the line, right? Within the next calendar year, they're both expiring at the end of 2023. Patrick Kane, of course, there will be so much going for him when it comes to market sentiment and people trying to get their offers in. For Jonathan Toews, I feel like it would be a lot more reduced. Maybe you have to get a third team involved, retain 50% and then 25% extra on top of that, so that whichever team gets Jonathan Toews at the very end of the day is only paying $2.6-something million a year. Like, that's a lot more feasible for the quality of player that he is right now, I would think. But either way, Jonathan Toews feeling a little bit scared about his safety in Chicago. Again, one more joke in there. Yeah, captain's gotta do what he's gotta do to make his players feel safe, right? And unfortunately, he did not do that 10 years ago. But still, I did think it was an interesting enough conversation to bring up the idea that he is sort of just unsure and maybe worried as to what happens in the next few months for him and the Chicago Blackhawks? Let me know in the comments all your thoughts about Jonathan Toews and this contract stuff. Patrick Kane, Seth Jones, and the rest of the young guys on that team. Do you see a Kirby Dach trade? Do you see a DeBrincat trade? Do you see a Kubalik or somebody else going out there as well? Let me know in the comments all your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this British Actual 99. And bye.